Welcome to R&R Showtime with Robert
and Ryan.
And today we have the pleasure of discussing The Legend of Vox Machina, the first 3 episodes, their premiere episodes. They came out, I think, day 1 with that, right?
Yeah, premiered this last Friday, 28th, January 28th.
Yep.
After a almost 3-year wait.
Was it 3 years? I thought it was like 2 years.
Yeah, I think it was because it was the January, I think, of 2019.
Yeah. I mean, since the Kickstarter, basically.
Yeah.
The record-breaking Kickstarter with the most raised money, I think it was. I think something else actually just raised more money.
At the time, yes.
What was it? What broke the record?
I think that the Chosen Show.
The Chosen Show? What's that?
It's the show about Jesus.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that seems like something that could break another money record. Nonetheless, Legend of Vox Machina Kickstarted multiple years ago, and literally through the advent of our dollars, me and Ryan specifically, because we did Kickstarter the show,
yes.
It has been brought to fruition, and now we get to talk about it and review it. And to just put it plainly, it is great.
It's so good. With the caveat that we theoretically have the bias of already being endeared to these characters and having some background knowledge of these stories that are going to play out throughout the series, but it's better than I think either of us could have hoped for.
I have to admit that there's no way to get around that we do have a bias here, but trying to look at it a little objectively, like just as a show, trying to put myself in that mindset, like what if I was just watching this? Is this good just because it's these characters that I know and love? And I really think it's just a good show. Like it is just good. Like it's got action, humor. They introduce us to the characters. They do a good job telling the story.
The animation is quality from Titmouse Production. You may recognize them from some Adult Swim productions in the past, but I think the way it's drawn, the way the characters look is pretty great. Amazon has given them kind of free reign to make this what it was meant to be.
Yeah.
And the story originates as a D&D campaign, and this is kind of like that campaign that already exists being perfected.
Yeah, this feels like
finessed.
An easy way to say is like this feels like a book being made into a show, except this is like the best translation of a book to a show you can imagine. It's just, there's just so much I could say that's good about it. It's hard to even pick some things. The animation's good, the storytelling's good, the voice acting is, come on, like it's literal voice actors that did the D&D show originally, and it's literally just them doing those voices again.
And that's just for the main cast of characters are the original people who play these characters, but we also have guest voice talents from David Tennant, Stephanie Beatriz, Tony Hale, people who are legitimate famous people, and they are coming to work on this show with, you could argue some of the members of Vox Machina's voice actors are famous. They are all famous, but they're not all household names. If any of them, maybe Ashley Johnson has.
Yeah, she plays a forensic scientist on TV.
Yeah. And she was in a TV show back in the day when she was a kid, I think, as well, right?
And she was Annie.
Yeah. So, but a lot of them aren't necessarily household names for being voice actors, but they're have some acclaim, and to really see them being able to just do the voice acting, because when they play the characters, they're doing their characters' voices, but they're having to come up with the dialogue and talk in the voices. When they're reading it as a script, it feels a little more finessed, it's more purposeful.
Yeah.
So I think a good place to start is talking about these characters as they are at this point in the series, trying not to delve too much into the characters they become. So let's go one by one, talking about who's your favorite character?
Easily, it still remains on Scanlan and Grog.
Yeah. So Scanlan and Grog, the gnome bard and the Goliath barbarian.
They Scanlan just being his charismatic, hilarious self, and Grog also still being the same. They both acted somewhat like comic reliefs in the D&D, but I mean, it's not intentional. It's just like the people having fun. Like that was a character that they were playing. And here it's translated perfectly. I mean, I think we even better get, it's like watching some of this is as much as you saw all the interactions that they had, like Scanlan, we didn't get to like see Scanlan being perverted except for times that, it was just described as like a thing. He's like, Scanlan, is a philanderer, and he goes and does some philandering and stuff.
Yeah. But like in this, the first time we see him, he's naked.
Yeah, he's naked in bed, like serenading some chick. And Grog, we just get, him being like sort of dopey, but just like a big badass barbarian, which again, in the thing, in Critical Role, in Critical Role, we saw that communicated, but it just feels so natural the ways that we're watching it happen.
Well, I did bring the note to you that I feel like Travis voicing Grog in Critical Role, I think he did the best job of like voicing the character, giving the mannerisms as he role played. So I think the difference between him in the campaign to him in the show is the least stark. There's like no jumping quality because it was already pretty much like perfect. And say a similar thing could be said for Scanlan because he's not putting on a voice, but it's more refined and specific in what he gets to do. And it's less riffing on actual pop songs and it's more him actually writing songs, which is refreshing and cool.
Yep. Not to get off of them, but I actually want to talk about another character real quick, Keyleth, right? Keyleth in this show, and who knows how it'll end up going, is more likable than she ever was as an actual character.
I have heard your and others' critiques of Keyleth as a character. I've never agreed with it. I've always liked Keyleth as a character, but I agree that putting her in the show kind of makes you more easily identify with what the character is. Yeah.
And I think that's one thing even about the show is that, so the characters that they were playing, right? Obviously they played the roles, but I think that in some cases, like you're doing, when you're playing D&D, you're playing the characters and you are, as a player, you're trying to get to an end. And sometimes you kind of like forget and you sacrifice your role for what you need to do. Right.
Yeah.
I think in this show, because they can specifically say, this is what the character's supposed to be like. So this is what we need to do in the writing. It's not like they have to make it up on the spot. And sometimes you just do whatever, but it's this character would do this. So this is what we're going to portray them doing, or this is what they would say.
So like in the campaign, Keyleth can be the sort of like nervous, like awkward one, but also be kind of the most powerful when it comes to any combat situation whatsoever. Whereas in the show, it reads a little more like it makes sense that her magic isn't like she's not just like able to articulate whatever spell suits the situation and be kind of the most powerful member of the group right off the bat. You can tell that there's going to be an arc to her growing into it. Whereas I like Druid as a character in D&D is just a very powerful class that she's playing as. And we don't see her like being able to basically utilize it to its full potential in the show, which is kind of good because it works with the character better.
Yeah.
Because in the campaign, she was one of the stronger members of the party.
Yeah. But I mean, also you could say arguably Marisha Ray didn't make very good tactical choices often.
But that was her trying to play into the character, which is good, but it can be frustrating when it's the actual story at the time hung on the balance of these characters succeeding. Whereas in a show, there's you can sort of craft to make things make more sense.
Yeah. And so that, I mean, what they are doing, they're portraying her in a way that actually makes it genuine and likable and something you can connect with. And I appreciate that. It's something I never felt really, watching Keyleth in Critical Role, watching Marisha Ray play her, which sometimes I thought, and like if Marisha Ray listens to this, like I have nothing against you as a person. Her playing Keyleth never appealed to me. Bo, I actually fully did not like. I really did not like that character at all. Laudna, I actually am enjoying a lot. So, and a part of me thought, do I not like Marisha Ray? Which again, I'm not trying. I don't want to make her, again. If she ever heard this, I don't want to make her feel bad. But watching Laudna is like, no, I just didn't like these characters. It really is the characters. It has nothing to do with Marisha Ray.
Here's the thing, and this is why I don't think it is a Marisha Ray thing. I liked Keyleth. I didn't care for Bo. And I feel like I thought Keyleth was I never disliked Keyleth. I thought she was a good part of the team. She's probably about like midway in terms of like my favorite on the team. Like she's probably like right in the middle. So I never really got that criticism of Keyleth, but I wasn't a fan of Bo personally. So knowing that you like her character in this newest campaign that I haven't watched, it is a good thing. But I also understand you not liking Keyleth as a character because Keyleth is it's a hard character to get behind in a D&D campaign because it's a character who who's like bound to like make kind of bad decisions, which in real life, a character who makes bad decisions is endearing. It's a character flaw. In a D&D campaign, it's frustrating because you're basically electing to have a character be less useful than the other members of the team.
Yeah.
And it feels like you could be hurting other members of the team. And I understand that criticism from a person who plays the games, but if the members of her party don't have a problem with her, and if a lot of the time she does end up being more useful, like even in the show, we see her fail with the lightning, but succeed by protecting them and saving their lives.
Yeah. And I pretty much agree with everything that you just said right there. Kind of something that I was thinking about when we're talking about Keyleth, and moving maybe to another character is Keyleth and Vex.
Vex or Vax?
Wait. Yeah, Vax. Okay. Yeah. So Keyleth and Vax, right? In the Critical Role, right? We all watched it. And again, this is spoilers, right? Like if you haven't watched Critical Role,
I think it's a minor spoiler. I know.
Yeah, it's a minor spoiler. Again, this is a spoiler, right? Skip this next couple seconds, right? In Critical Role, Vax and Keyleth get together eventually, right? When that happens in Critical Role, it does come a little bit out of nowhere.
I remember it being Vax basically saying to Keyleth at one point, I like you, right? And it's just, that's the first time it even entered my mind as a thing between the two.
Yeah, he basically had to literally state it, and then like she played off of it and kind of rolled with it and like and all that. And that was cool, right? This show is doing what we all needed, which was actually laying groundwork. Like little things in subtle ways. And we're like, okay, great, cool. They're dropping those hints now so that this can be a thing later and makes sense.
But it's funny you would mention Vex because we do actually see a sort of play between the two where Vex seems annoyed by Keyleth.
Yes.
Whereas Vax is endeared by Keyleth.
Yeah.
And so whenever we see the twins interacting with Keyleth, their sort of opinions of her are like played off each other. And I think it helps to give the separation between Vex and Vax better, which let's go into it. Vex and Vax.
Yeah, Vex and Vax. Oh my God. Everything you wanted. I like Vex. Okay. Vax. I want to say that he was almost too edgelord, and sometimes it would make him less likable. But I think it's what he's being written as in this story currently is it's not too edgy. It's not too edgelord, and it feels good.
We're feeling the heart of him more from the start. So cards on the table, my least favorite character in Vox Machina was Vax. My favorite character in Vox Machina was Vex.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard not to like Vex. We're just getting the charisma's coming through so perfectly.
So Laura Bailey voices Vexalia, and she is a phenomenal voice acting talent. Like listening to her character, listening to both characters, they put on an accent. Vex is not to like rag on Liam, but Vex sounds like a more proper British accent, and neither of them are British.
Yeah. I mean, but I don't think Vax even is supposed to have a British accent. Like
he puts on like a slight accent.
It's like a slight. It's really just like him kind of talking like this. Like, is it really? I mean, he's doing a solid Snake, is what I always get from it.
But there is a bit of an accent to it because they have to be siblings, so they should. Yeah. So he's like, "Oh, Vexalia, Keyleth,
yeah,
yeah,
Keyleth." like yeah, there's a little flexion there, but I think his is less pronounced or something. I mean, maybe it have to do with what they like. She was I mean, it doesn't. It never actually made sense why her voice was so much different from his, but whatever. I mean, it's not like they were like, all right, let's make sure our fucking voices sync up, you know, when we do them. And yeah, maybe he just hung out with a different kind of people as they grew up, and she picked up more.
Well, I mean, he does have an accent. I challenge you to go listen to it again.
You're right. Yeah, I'm not. There is an inflection there. It's
but hers is more pronounced, and hers is, no offense, better.
Yeah.
But I think any of the members of the group would agree that Laura kind of has the arguably the most talent as a voice actress.
Yeah, the most range. I mean,
except maybe Matt.
Yeah. Well, Matt is prolific. But no, actually, yeah. He has literally done so many different voices. It's actually ridiculous. So yeah, he's the only other one that's probably as good. But she just has range. She does so much. Even if you look at her cast of people that she's portrayed, sometimes I'm like, wow, that was her. You listen to her do Jester, and you're like, this is Jester and Vex'ahlia. Like, how are these both the same voice actor? You know?
Yeah, and she's in video games and stuff, and yeah. So Vex'ahlia at this point in the series, I feel like she's arguably the least developed so far, because she just kind of shows off as like kind of like the leader character, and we get a little inkling of her running off with the treasure from the dragon's horde. Mm-hmm. So we get that sort of glimpse of that part of her character. Mm-hmm. But at this point, she's kind of the least developed. Mm-hmm. There's some tragic background with Vex and Vax and their family, maybe something with dragons. But dragons, obviously, she tells the story of that. Yeah. But I think right now we haven't really delved into her specific, and we haven't gotten into her relationship with another character, which we're not going to spoil that one. Yeah. Because that one develops a little more over time. Yeah. But
and that one has not had any groundwork laid into it yet. So
there's a hint at it.
Was there? Okay. Well, maybe I have to go kind of rewatch and I'll see. I did not see quite that happen. Yeah, but that's not good. I don't want to even spoil anything.
But and Vax, we see the arc with the coin that he gave to the little kid and then tossed that alone, storytelling. Yeah. Like it's endeared me more to Vax as a character than watching the entire campaign did. Yeah.
Now, one thing for people, I mean, that are watching the show and don't know Critical Role is those first 2 episodes are not anything we actually saw in Critical Role. Yeah. Those are things that are referenced and talked about. And so anybody that watches the show long enough knows that those events occurred, and they are important to events that happen later, but we never actually saw them. So it was a cool, not only introduction, but like for people that didn't watch Critical Role, we were seeing something actually brand new. Yeah. Essentially. We only heard this story. We never actually got to watch it unfold. So it was really cool to see that.
But episode 3 sort of gets into a much more familiar story arc, which we're seeing play out differently. There are aspects to this being quite different than how we see it in the show. There's an entire like quest that they go on before this. That is the beginning of Critical Role.
Yeah. The beginning of Critical Role is like an entirely different thing that spans many, many episodes. And before we get to what is episode 3.
Yeah. They visit a whole nother city.
They travel underground and fight like a bunch of different crazy beasts and stuff.
Will Wheaton and Felicia Day show up.
Yeah. You know, it was really cool arc. It's very typical D&D. However, it's fine. I think it's good that they didn't include it because it doesn't actually further what you would look at as like the big story of Vox Machina.
It lays groundwork, but it's groundwork that we can see happen after this. Yeah. And then, so that's what's key. I could see them bringing this aspects of what we've seen so far and just address it later on.
Yeah. What I think might have been nice though, I would have liked it is if instead of being immediately invited to this dinner, maybe being like, this dinner occurs in 30 days and then referencing that like there was some time in between the dinner and like them getting the keep and that they went on that adventure during that time.
So I agree with that. The other thing that makes this different is that at this point, they are still pretty much strangers to the council, to these council people. Whereas in the campaign, the thing that they do is go on a quest to find Kima.
Yes.
Yeah. So they interact with her on a quest and like do battle with her. So she gets endeared to them that way.
Yeah. And and Allura as well. They are already friends with Allura before they even went on that quest. That's why they were asked to do it.
Yeah, and that's involved in some way with the quest that they went on.
Yeah. So
within the show.
So definitely a difference. We're seeing a departure here. One thing I think is going to be nice to see. Kind of, we went off on a somewhat of a tangent there, but back to Vex and Vex, specifically Vex, is that Trinket will no longer be a basically useless,
thing
annoying
that gets forgotten about.
Thing that gets forgotten or killed on the verge of death multiple times. He'll actually be like, I mean, he could be useful. He's an armored bear, like he hasn't actually been useful yet, but he can be.
Yeah, he helped in the bar brawl.
Yeah, he was very helpful there. He like tore a guy in half and stuff.
Yeah, we love Trinket.
Man, so stepping away from characters for just a moment, I want to talk about like choices of how they're doing things. One, their willingness to be irreverent in the show it feels so good.
We get that with the beginning because it starts off, we see this like classic D&D party face down against this blind evil, and they're just wiped out, and it sets the tone for the show really well.
Yeah, exactly. That this is a brutal show. People die and get like destroyed, and also the irreverence of it, that our heroes are like in a bar and like puke and get into like a crazy fight and all this, and the thing is that actually captures a lot of what like their game was. Like, while it had really awesome, cool, serious role play, that like moments that like almost bring you to tears and like have you on the edge of your seat. There's also just a lot of like poop and fart and dick jokes.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's a bunch of friends hanging out, like cracking jokes, trying to get each other to laugh.
Yeah, and before they were called Vox Machina, I believe I could be a little inaccurate here, but basically their group was called the Fucks or something like that. Like, it was literally like something kind of stupid like that, because that's kind of what they were as a group. They were just like, whatever. Like, this, what we're seeing in the show is what I think they always intended that they thought they were. And we see Critical Role over time is where they develop into, it's the legend of Vox Machina. Like, they started as kind of nobody, knucklehead group of mercenaries, and they develop into like heroes of the realm.
It's another thing that's going to be good about the show that they can do differently, and this is actually bringing it back to characters. We get to have Pike be around the whole time.
Oh God, yeah. That's, I mean, it is so nice. I mean, I will say that right now, Ashley Johnson was hardly ever there, because she was literally on her television show.
Yeah.
And when she was there, she'd be there for a little while and then kind of be in and out, and her character was in and out.
Yeah. So her character kind of took a back burner.
And so there was inconsistency in how she played her character, to say, like, sometimes it wasn't like the personality of Pike wasn't like very pronounced and defined like a lot of the other characters were, but that's because it's almost like she would stop playing for months and then come back and play again for a couple weeks.
Most of her character was developed in relation to Grog and Scanlan.
Yeah.
Particularly Grog.
And so it'll be interesting to see more of what she always imagined Pike's character was supposed to be in the show. Like, I think this show will give us more of who she was. And this might be a small criticism, that right now I'm not like really loving what it is. It's kind of like she doesn't have very much personality.
I think,
other than I'm the cleric, like, Everlight, please help them.
But we're seeing like how she feel like clearly this is a character who's gone astray in some way, because like we see with her trying to give the blessing to the family that she's like unsure of it. And we see it like sort of like going in and out. At the end of the third episode, it looks like she's lost her light in a way, which as a cleric is a problem.
Yeah. Which, I mean, we know that, I mean, it's not like a spoiler to kind of talk about her backstory a little bit. Either they're eventually going to say it or they won't ever, and nobody will know. I
think going into backstories could be,
maybe we should. Yeah. We'll try and stay away. Again, this could be the rest of this, and it already has had some spoilers, but we'll try to avoid some. But I really would like to see where Pike goes. In these first ones, I didn't get a lot of personality out of her, and it's almost to say she never did, but this is their opportunity to give her more.
Yeah. So we could be reading less personality into her because we don't know the personality she's supposed to have.
Yeah. And this could just be what it is. I mean, I guess that her personality always was to just kind of be,
I read more into Vex's character in the show because I know what Vex's character is going to be, but I don't know how much of that was present for her specifically.
Yeah.
So what other, we have the character who's going to take a forefront for this next arc, Mr. Percival DeRollo. Do you know his whole name?
Percival. Percival Kowalski, Frederick von Musel, DeRollo III. I think.
Yes.
I think it's something like that. Something
Yeah,
like
that
I like that
sounds-
they haven't said it yet in the show. They haven't said his whole name.
But yeah, so we get the former noble gunslinger that is Percy,
Yeah.
who is, again, not like just laying cards on the table, kind of was like my second least favorite next to Vax in the show. And I think it's just because I think it might just be because he was the gun guy and because he was like, he just seemed like the cool guy.
He was like too cool. I'm too smart, too cool for this kind of, and so,
In a similar vein to Vax, like they're the two characters who felt like they were being played by people who played D&D before, because they were the two characters who were being played by players who were familiar with D&D.
Yeah, basically, and they both had their whole things were both being like kind of unaffected to everything.
Yeah.
And that still comes across on the show, but it feels more like character traits than like, yeah, it feels a little more genuine. And honestly, the show, you know what I really love is how they portrayed this iconic scene, because this third episode is definitely something we saw in Critical Role.
It kind of played out exactly how I pictured it.
It did. Yeah. This played out exactly the way you would imagine. It was really great to like, this is the third episode is the first episode where we as Critical Role watchers are getting to see that, you know, what we saw before portrayed. And it's so awesome to see it that way. But I think this almost did a better job at getting across like the Percy's emotion.
That's where I'm going to say, that's where I think the show really delivers, is that you get to see the quiet contemplativeness. Like, you can't listen to someone being quietly contemplatively like emotional and brooding. Like, it just comes across as, oh, he's being brooding. But if you see a character experiencing like trauma and anger, like it reads better, it feels better, you feel it, you identify with it.
Yeah. And it's really, because I mean, here's the thing. When you were watching D&D, I mean, like Ryan said, you can't experience in D&D somebody being that kind of person, because everybody's at some certain point just sitting there saying nothing. So like, it's hard to get across that your character is like that kind of character. But yeah, with this scene in the third episode just gave you all the real emotion from Percy. Like, truly, like, you got to see how he really reacted. And also the at the end, again, this it's not a spoiler to talk about what happened. I keep thinking in my head I don't want to spoil the episode, but you should have watched
the episode itself. There are no spoilers.
Yeah. We get what did seem like a total, and in the show, or sorry, in Critical Role, it seemed like a total out of left field. Like, what is this random thing? But like, when he puts on the mask and like weird shadow stuff starts going on, and it's like your soul's full, all that, it came out of nowhere in the D&D, but it also, we get to see that it's coming out of nowhere in the show too. It's literally like none of them have seen.
But even the show puts hints at it. We see the mask in his room.
Yeah, exactly.
We see like how burdened he is by this. Like, not only like in his memories that we see like foreshadowed.
Yep.
But yeah,
it's just so much. Again, it's good storytelling. They're actually giving us things that make this a better to watch here than it was to watch it in Critical Role.
Also, I don't know how well the dramatic irony works for people who don't know what's coming, but when we're at the dinner party and we see Percy getting excited by all these names of like of nobles, like, oh, this family and this family, oh, it feels like you get the sense that he almost feels like home with this, because he has not been around nobility since his family was alive.
Yeah.
And the second he hears their name, it's like this switch, and it's dramatic.
Yeah. Now, one thing I will say that was better from Critical Role that I don't know, maybe they couldn't have done it better in the show, is that they basically gave away the Briarwoods are a vampire and, like in dark sorceress sort of thing, because they just straight up tell you, they give us a whole scene where it's just shown. And then when we get to it later in Critical Role, it was not described that they were a vampire and a sorceress. Nobody knew that.
Yeah.
It was just, these are the people that killed his family. Like, they were just some evil nobles. And then the scene with Vax is where it's revealed to us, no, they're like supernatural, have like dark magic powers and stuff, and almost kill Vax. So when we were seeing it there in the D&D, it was like very tense. I mean, and Vax, he literally was in the D&D almost like 0 hit points with nobody there to help him. It was a very tense moment for everybody watching the show and for the people there.
Yeah, so when he went out the window, it was like, oh shit.
Yeah, like he was like, this is like my only hope to maybe go get some help. I need to get out of here.
Stuff is going down.
Yeah, it's so funny that their word was Jenga, which was always their word for shit's going down in Critical Role. But they made it Chenga.
Maybe as a copyright thing?
I must be. Actually, it has to be that they can't say Jenga.
Yeah.
Like, because
Chenga just seems so innocuous.
Yeah. Chenga is basically as close as they could get to what it was, except, Jenga is literally like a word. Saying Jenga is probably a trademark. So,
wow. Because
I was like, wow, yeah, like whatever. But nonetheless, that was a really crazy, tense moment because we didn't know that these were literally fucking like a vampire and a sorceress that were about to appear on him. It was just like, oh no, he got found out. In the show, we already know that like them, sneaking or coming up to him is going to be dangerous. Like it's going to be bad. So it loses a little bit of impact almost, but maybe the audience they don't know what's going to happen.
Well, but we see like the Lord Briarwood was able to like rip through people. So like Vax is a person. So his likelihood in that scenario wasn't great. And they were already trained to be a little suspicious of the situation because they recognize Percy, which I don't know in the campaign if we were meant to know that they recognize him as much as they do, because they definitely play into it more in the show. Like it feels like the lady's toying with Percy.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that it always was that they recognized him in the show, in Critical Role as well.
Maybe, yeah. But in Critical Role, another difference is they were expecting the Briarwoods to come. They knew that they were coming.
Yeah.
And so that is a difference that they were caught off guard by this. So I feel like, as I recall, I thought that they had done something to try and disguise Percy.
I can't actually quite remember.
But removing that and having it just sort of forced upon them adds a little drama. I also find it questionable that we see. It looks like Keyleth is the only one to notice them manipulating the Lord with his words. Yeah.
I like how it was actually very clear, like glowing eye, and Keyleth just like notices it and does nothing, says nothing.
Yeah, but maybe it's going to play into how they get out of jail in the next episode.
Yeah, I guess so. That was also another thing is like they did not go to jail in Critical Role
because in the show they already had a relationship with this Lord.
Yeah,
and were able to talk about it, and they had relationshiis with Kima, and so they had some standing, whereas right now they don't. So this is going to be a little different.
Yeah. So, this is a good kind of segue into their power, magic power, their abilities and stuff like that. So one thing I think is a little, I think it's very good that they did in the show, and I think it's necessary, is that they have essentially scaled down what Vox Machina is at this juncture. Because as we kind of said, they went on a whole different adventure. They had multiple adventures. They've got a bunch of different magic items at this point. At this point, they still had the carpet of flying.
Yeah, I expected them to find it because I think it belonged in that tower that they were at, or that place they were at.
No, I think they got it from
Alora's tower.
Alora's tower, which like that's how they knew Alora before. Is that like they fixed her tower or saved it? Her tower was like destroyed, and they used the carpet of flying to get out of it. Yeah, and they had to do something for her. And they basically stole it, like it was hers.
Yeah.
But they don't have nearly as like we know that they have some of their magic items. Like we did see Vax with the snake belt, which is one of the things he had. But he got that on that journey that they were supposed to have gone on. They've been leveled down essentially because they don't have these relationships with the court, and because they don't have necessarily all these magic items that we know of and all these different things to kind of bolster them up. So it puts them in a position to have a lot of room to grow upwards.
Yeah. One thing that we have not addressed about the Briarwood arc and why it makes sense that they would start it at the Briarwood arc is that the show is basically erasing a character that existed right about up until the Briarwood arc, as I recall.
Yep.
And that is their sorcerer companion.
Yeah, Tiberius Stormwind,
who was a dragonborn sorcerer, and he also was very clutch to their party. as the like chief magic user, because Pike wasn't always there, and Keyleth's druid powers were a little more select. So this is a party that doesn't have a wizard and it doesn't have a sorcerer. And when you started talking about how they deal out the powers as well, I thought you're actually going to address how the dragon fight. I really liked how they were able to address that, because in D&D, anyone could theoretically just sort of fight a dragon, because you get a turn-by-turn action and you can just whittle down dealing it damage. But that doesn't make sense in a show. You have to dramatically put it out and have them come up with strategies to fight this guy. And so that's why that first time they fight it, nothing they do can touch it, because they don't know the trick. Whereas the second time they come around, they think about it, they trick the dragon, and we get to see, technically Scanlan's their main magic user, I guess. I forgot about him.
Yeah.
But we get to see him trick the dragon in a way where, like, playing D&D, like, I don't think Scanlan would have the spell, that major image, to trick the dragon at this point.
Yeah.
But in the show, it makes sense. You can just, like, write it off like, that's a neat spell that a bard probably knows.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it makes sense that he should be able to make an illusion spell and stuff. So, like, what I was thinking is that they have, like, leveled down their powers to a degree, because at the time when they fight that dragon, at the time where they start the Briarwood arc, they're like 11 or 12, which is pretty high level in D&D. Like, it might seem like out of 20, like only halfway, but like most people don't even get that far.
I've never played a character past 10.
Yeah, I've only played a handful, like literally like 2, I think. And so you're quite powerful at that level. You have quite a few good spells at that level. You would have major image, which is like
but this is the dragon.
This is the dragon. And so it's feasible that they could have fought that dragon at their level at the time. But I love that they make the dragon like, this is so insurmountable, and they had to find a special weak point thing and use that and their own skills to really beat him. It wasn't just like we just have the amount of power that is necessary to beat this dragon and have to do it tactically. Like their power is leveled down, so they have to be creative. They're fallible. They're killable, right? It was a little joke in the show that once they got even later in the levels, they were like, we're basically gods now.
Yes.
They've said that as a joke multiple times. There's even, I really hope we get to see the swan dive.
I want to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That will be hopefully that comes up in the show. I really want to see that. But what they've done is they scaled down their powers and their connections and stuff. So we have so much room to grow, but they also haven't defined their powers, which leaves it open so that we can see them do all the things that, they have done and not make them seem overpowered. Like Keyleth being able, there's no, D&D power that makes a wall of thorns all around you.
Yeah.
And save everybody.
That saves you from rocks and stuff. Yeah.
But it makes total sense that she could do that. You know? There isn't like, I'm trying to think of some of the other things that I saw them doing. Like we saw Grog rage, right?
Yeah.
Which is a power barbarians have. And every barbarian would rage every time you get into combat. But we saw him do it one time, that thing. And it didn't look like a power he activated. He just he activated. He just swolled up and got, went crazy and stuff.
Yeah.
We see like practical things that Pike's doing, like having a blessed shield and being able to heal.
Putting the magic on Vex's bow shot.
Yeah, exactly. Like things that make sense for her to be able to do, but it's not being like put it as like, these are the magic, this is guiding bolt, and this is the, just stuff that they can do. And I like how they're portraying it. It leaves it open for them to be able to do what they need to, but also doesn't make them too powerful to say.
Yeah.
And I can see how even like, they have room again to get more powerful too. Like they'll probably acquire more magic items and stuff. Maybe Pike will increase or bolster her connection to her god by doing things, and she'll get more power from that. And, Keyleth will do, I mean, I'm interested to see how that goes. And I think they're handling it very well.
Yeah. It's hard to say too many good things about this, especially as people who are already fans. But I really believe that this is accessible to anyone who's not familiar with these characters already. And like
all these things that we're saying, right, are valid, and they obviously are the reference of what we've seen between Critical Role, but the show itself is just done well. It's good storytelling, even if it like they've changed things. If they had tried to make this their D&D into that, it wouldn't be that good. We'd have to say like, well, it's cool to see these things, but this is not like, this is not that great of a show. Like I like watching it, but they did. They made it into a show that everybody can watch and is just good. It has its serious moments. They have the right blend of seriousness, like with the boy. That was like a literally kind of a funny little small moment that became a big deal later.
I would put this show something and this is where it's hard to remove the bias from it. I put this show on par with the other notable animated show on Amazon Prime, Invincible. I would put these two shows like as comparable.
Absolutely. Yeah. Invincible being another show that's irreverent in its ways and violent.
Yeah.
And yeah. And I am loving it. I think that they have made a great show here that is good for everybody. I truly am going to recommend everybody I know watch it. Like, I was just at a dinner with friends last night and I said, hey, all of you should all watch this. If you like fantasy elements at all, like you don't have to like D&D. You never had to play D&D. You don't have to like it. This show is good if you like fantasy stuff. If you like killing and violence and funny, jokes and things like that, this has all of that.
I mean, D&D fantasy as a genre is so like it is so kind of hard to like pin down what really it means. Like, there's Lord of the Rings, which is basically the inspiration for D&D, and then everything is sort of adapting Lord of the Rings in some way, which Lord of the Rings takes adaptations from older stuff. But most fantasy we get nowadays is an adaptation of Lord of the Rings or an adaptation of some sort of D&D concept that adapted from Lord of the Rings. So removing Lord of the Rings, this is probably my favorite like sort of fantasy show or thing that I've seen. Because fantasy does not always grab me, to be honest, but this works. This is what I would look for in fantasy.
Yeah, again, can't say enough good things about it. It's so good. And I'm very happy it's so good because, one, I think it's going to get greenlit for more money. Like, Amazon's probably going to take it and give them like twice or triple the budget.
From what I read, it's already like guaranteed that they would get 2 seasons out of it, which, considering the Kickstarter pretty much paid for 10 of the episodes of this first 12 episode season. So we have 12 episodes to look forward to, people.
Yeah.
And there's going to be another season after that, pretty much guaranteed, just because of like the fan swell for it. But if it gets that sort of crossover appeal and people who weren't already fans of Critical Role start watching it and get into it, then this could be the thing that starts the show for their other campaign that's already finished and they have characters for that they could get to work on, and we could have 2 separate D&D irreverent fun shows to be watching. And look, I'll be the first to admit that the Mighty Nine might not be as good, but you know what, having those characters sort of refined, I think that's going to be a funnier show.
Yeah, I think so. Mighty Nine, that entire campaign was really not like, I watched all of it, but it really was not like so great to me, and I didn't love it that much.
But treating it as like a sort of sister show to Vox Machina, where it's like the legend of Vox Machina, it could be the story of the Mighty Nine, or like something that makes it clear to the beginning that it's not trying to be the Vox Machina show.
Yeah.
If they can exist at the same time, where you don't feel like you're missing what Vox Machina is while you're watching Mighty Nine, I think that would serve Mighty Nine better. Because existing in Vox Machina's shadow is, I think, the biggest criticism you can give of the Mighty Nine.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, Vox Machina was literally the story of a group, sort of a ragtag mercenary group that it developed eventually into like literal saviors. Yeah, legends. Like, they are literal legends.
We don't want to get into all the stuff they get into, but they are there. There's a reason this is called their legend.
Yeah. Mighty Nine do many significant, like very large significant events on their own, but they never are legendary characters. Like, at any point, they're very powerful and they do important things, but like they just never were that kind of thing. So that show would be different.
Like, they even end their character arcs weaker than Vox Machina ends.
Yeah.
They end at lower levels.
Yeah. And it's so like what Mighty Nine would be different than what Vox Machina is. Vox Machina, again, they even in the show, they make it even more so than what it was we watched in Critical Role, that they're starting in a very low place. And so by the end, they truly will. This is the legend, of Vox Machina, and we'll get to see that. And I think this makes for a good show. Yeah. Mighty Nine could be entertaining, but they would have to really adapt it a lot to make it.
But I think I don't think it should follow what Vox Machina is. I think allowing people to watch Vox Machina and then produce a Mighty Nine show in the vein of it, but allowing it to be its own thing Whereas Mighty Nine as a D&D campaign always has to be a D&D campaign. And that's why I think Mighty Nine struggles. I think a lot of those characters are there and could produce good stories, but as a D&D campaign, it was kind of weird and aimless. But putting their production and like writing behind it, those characters have the potential to be a lot more interesting and a lot more fleshed out as actual characters than I think Vox Machina, because Vox Machina is much more archetypal.
Yeah.
Whereas Mighty Nine had like
that's even how Mighty Nine even felt and seemed, is that they wanted to get away from these archetypal characters that they played before and play something different. So they all made these very different characters, and we got that, and it was interesting to watch. But it was not what Vox Machina is like. What any person I think would expect like a D&D campaign could be at its greatest, like to be that kind of group and go and do these epic things that they will eventually do. Is like what everybody maybe aspires to. And Mighty Nine was not that. Like they were not trying to make those kind of characters. They were trying to do something different and have fun. But
I would be interested in seeing it as a show, and I think that our odds of getting it as a show depend on this one succeeding. And which is not like, it's not an entirely selfish thing. Like, watch the show because I want more episodes. Watch the show because I think you're gonna love it.
Yeah.
If you're listening to this and haven't already watched it, come on. But
what I am more excited for than them potentially getting a Mighty Nine green light or whatever is that the success of this show will tell studios, because I mean, I believe they said that they went to many studios and asked them,
they said no.
Before Amazon
or they wanted to change what they like, tone down the dick and farts.
And they did not compromise on that and needed to have it, but Amazon picked it up, and this will show other studios, like the ones that it's kind of like that, show those studios that denied them what they gave up by trying to change it and say, no, it's got to be more like this or that. But I mean, what kind of, like, I hope it does so well that everybody's like, whoa, we need to have more shows like this. We need more fantasy shows. So then we can see stuff like, Dimension 20 and Matt Colville and like them, people who are YouTube famous, become more acclaimed.
I'll admit I am very shallow in my online D&D campaign watching. The only ones I've really gotten into are the first two Critical Role campaigns, but there are so many out there that have potential for and have like just as notable people. Like there are actual celebrities with D&D campaigns going on. Like Vin Diesel is very long publicly been a D&D fan. Like he made the movies out of his D&D character, right?
What's it called?
Riddick?
Not Riddick. It's the other one. His like Witch Hunter or something like that. Yeah. The Last Witch Hunter or whatever. Like that's like a class he made up himself. But Joe Manganiello. I don't know how you say. Joe Manganiello. He's famous for having a celebrity D&D game that he does.
Dan Harmon has a D&D campaign where they actually animate it, but it's like a small internet thing because like Dan Harmon can be producing Rick and Morty and working on Rick and Morty, but still like when it comes to a D&D thing, that's like an internet thing, right? Harmon Quest is the name of that one.
Yes. Brennan Lee Mulligan on Dimension 20. He is the only other. He's like, people say Matt Mercer is the greatest DM ever made. Brennan Lee Mulligan could also be one of the best DMs I've ever seen.
So it has occurred to me that while we gave credit to all of our characters and their voice actors through this, we kind of tiptoed around talking about Matt.
Oh yeah, Matt. I mean, it's almost like it goes without saying somewhat that, I mean, everything that people don't understand, that everything you see here was, while the characters are those voice actors playing in the world, Matthew Mercer created all of this. Like, this is not like they made this up for the show. This was made by him and they've brought it to life in the show.
Every character that isn't a part of Vox Machina was invented by Matt, originally voiced by Matt on the spot. The world was made up by Matt. The stuff they're doing was invented by Matt. Like this Briarwood arc has some playing into the backstory of Percy, but
Matt took what Taliesin Jaffe, Percy's character and voice actor, he took what he told him and then crafted an entire like city and all of this background for it. Like, he made all that come to life.
and created who the Briarwoods were. He made them a vampire and sorceress lady, whatever she is.
Yeah, which made it. I mean, God, it's like you can't even.
And he gets to voice the Lord Briarwood.
Yeah, he's voicing Lord Briarwood, or more notably, he is the coat check guy. Not kidding.
More notably, he's the voice of Trinket the bear.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm sure that we'll see him. I'm glad that, I mean, obviously he couldn't be.
He played he's just kind of in the background. Like a lot of the background characters are just Matt, which kind of fits into it. But
I think in some way, I think Matt wanted characters of note to have other actors doing it. And he didn't, like, obviously he literally did every single voice that existed before that. So he's kind of like, let me just not be as many voices as I can, unless they're truly something I fit. Like Briarwood, I mean, that's a good voice for Matt to portray. But
when you think about it, these female characters we were originally listening to Matt Mercer voicing Lady Briarwood, voicing Lady Kima and Alora. And so getting actual women make them feel like real characters now.
Yeah, much better too. Cause I mean, they're like Kima's voice was almost like it was a voice. While what you got from Kima was that she was like a tough, take her serious kind of girl. The way that he had to portray the voice, because he was trying to make it a female voice while also tough, made it sound like a joke. And because she's a halfling, it literally sounded like she was a kid. And the voice actor for Kima now definitely evokes the she's kind of like a badass.
It's Stephanie Beatriz, who most recently was the Mirabelle in Encanto, but the voice she's doing here is Rosa from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, pretty dead on, just Rosa, who's kind of probably my favorite character in that show. She's just great, and I'm happy to see her like popping up more places.
Yeah, I mean
and
Matt Mercer is go ahead. So finish what you're saying.
The dragon, the first arc bad guy we get in the show is being voiced by David Tennant, who, if you don't know, was a doctor in Doctor Who and a lot of people's favorite doctor. And so he's kind of a big deal.
It's it's funny that you right when you said that, you were like, he's a doctor. And I literally am thinking in my head, I was like, that just sounds like you're saying that he has an MD. Like,
yeah.
Sorry, just that was funny.
No, he's got a screwdriver, not an MD.
But yeah, I mean, all-star cast, but yeah, Matt Mercer, it's in some ways he's taking a lesser role in the show, but I mean, this show is Matt Mercer.
Yeah.
The show is all those voice actors. They portray those things. This is Legend of Vox Machina. They made all the choices. They did all the things. But Matt, as the DM, facilitated all of the things that we see. And we can't, in some ways, if Matt Mercer ever gets to hear this, we can't think of enough for having created one of the most epic, amazing stories. He says they're so surprised that they got all the money from the Kickstarter and that all these things happened. But I'm like, man, you don't even understand how good this content is.
Really, if any of the people involved in Critical Role are listening to this, we both took our time sort of criticizing some of the characters, but we saying that some of the characters didn't work for us was not us trying to criticize them as characters or the people playing them. It's just those they didn't the barrier of the D&D format kind of kept those characters from being fully realized and clicking. So now that we're getting to see them, I think these characters are working better than they ever did before.
Yeah.
And it really shows that they had the thought, these characters were better than the format allowed us to understand. And I think they always knew that. And I think Matt always knew that these characters had a sort of depth to them and appreciated them and rewarded them for coming up with these characters and fleshing out their backstory and allowing them to have these interesting arcs. And so the criticisms we give are just us trying to be, or at least for me, was just trying to be honest about how I feel about some of the characters and how this show is letting them have their flowers.
Yep.
Yeah,
man. I mean, this show, I'm so happy with how good it is. It's truly enjoyable. Again, total bias when we say this, but I also think it is very good to anybody that, would enjoy a show like this. This is you need to watch this. This is going to be we're watching it every, week when it comes out. And yeah, just happy it's so good.
Yeah,
like,
this has become appointment viewing for me.
Yeah, this is better than I expected. I want to say, like I did not. It's not like I had high or low, but I was kind of like, I didn't know how good it was going to be, and it's better than I expected.
That's the sort of the key thing here. I think both of us went into this expecting to enjoy it. I don't know if either of us expected to love it as much as we do.
Truly, yep.
Yeah, and just thinking back to that Kickstarter they did. Because they put out this Kickstarter with like a fairly modest like fundraising goal.
Yeah, it was like a couple $100,000.
Yeah, and it like hit 1 million in a day, and so we saw they had this live stream that they had prepared to do of just like of a Q&A, like where they expected by the time they did this Q&A that they would have maybe part of their fundraising goal hit, but at that point they had already like far exceeded their original goal. And so we just sort of like start this live stream with them all sort of awestruck by the swell of support they got.
Yeah.
And to know that like it took a few years for it to happen.
Yeah, as it would,
And 2020 certainly didn't help with that matter.
Yeah, of course.
But their work makes me feel so happy that I gave them that money.
Oh, totally.
And like regardless of any rewards that you get from like joining a Kickstarter, like getting little sneak peeks and all that stuff, none of that, like seeing the final product that like we sort of helped in a way, like
I produced the show.
Yeah, let's be real, it would have been fundraised without either of us because they made so much money. But feeling like that we're part of it, I think gives us a sense of ownership.
That's like saying just because 1 million other people voted, my vote doesn't count. No, my vote counts exactly as much as everybody else.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
like had we not produced it, it would still be here, but we helped it.
Yep.
And so again, I think that is going to lend us a little bias in favor of this. So if anyone has an opinion that differs from ours, I'd like to hear it. I'd like to understand, but
yeah, please tell me why you don't like it. I mean, like in a non, like I want to understand. Like,
look, the Rotten Tomatoes is not the bar for everything, but last I checked it, the show sits at 100% and like a 90-something% audience score. I can see people not being a fan of this kind of show, not liking it, obviously.
Yeah.
Or people who don't like to watch cartoons, like criticizing it because they can't let themselves enjoy cartoons. I can see that.
And I'm not even one, I'm not big on animation that much anymore myself, but like, I mean, I don't dislike animation. And I mean, animation is the only way you could really do this well, right?
Yeah.
You can't do a live action of this.
There are points where I was like, I wonder what if they had done this as live action? I'd been like, it would have been bad.
It would be a multi-million-dollar like production. It'd be huge. It'd be like, making a Lord of the Rings and stuff.
And it probably would have ended badly because a lot of like, if you can't put in Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones budget into something, it's not going to turn out great. And you could put in that budget into something and still get something lackluster.
And yeah, speaking of a thing that has a lot of budget put to it, but didn't come out quite the way I would have hoped, Wheel of Time, again, that's a whole podcast I might do sometime soon.
But look, that's another Amazon production, right?
Yeah, it's an Amazon production, tons of money put into it.
It probably had way more money into it.
Yeah.
And I actually don't know if the stars are actually bigger in it.
Well, I mean, Rosamund Pike is pretty big, but everybody else is either unknown or.
But that is kind of on par with like some of the voice actors in this. So
nonetheless, we're not talking about Wheel of Time right now.
Yeah,
Legend of Vox Machina, great so far. I mean, honestly, like practically an A+ show. I mean,
I love it. And
there's some bias in there, but whatever. This is our show, and we can talk about it if we want. So
it's our show, not yours.
Yeah, but that's it for now, guys. Go watch the show.
Oh yeah, go watch it if you haven't already. Why are you listening to this?
Yeah, I know. But yeah,
I know my voice is delightful, but come on,
you spoiled the whole damn thing for yourself. So
all right,
whatever. Until next time, folks. This has been Robert
and Ryan.
Have a good one.
Good day.